Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lawyer and advisor associated with President Trump who's done really great things for President Trump. Her name is Cleta Mitchell. And she's done actually more for Trump than the advisors that he's had in the past 4 years, or most of the advisors that he's had. Many of these people have led him astray. But I'll read you an Associated Press article. Former Trump advisor takes prominent role in voting battle. Associated Press. A GOP lawyer who advised former President Donald Trump on his campaign is now playing a central role in coordinating the Republican effort to create protocols pertaining to laws around the country, voting laws. Cleta Mitchell, a longtime Republican lawyer and advocate for conservative causes, was among the Trump advisors on the January call. Okay, in Georgia, now Mitchell has taken the helm of two separate efforts to push for tighter regulations and laws to fight Democratic efforts. She is also advising the state lawmakers crafting voting restrictions. Protocol, simply having protocol, like little simple things like voter ID, that's not a restriction. It's interesting how Democrats, and this is the Republican perspective here. I'm not a Republican. I used to be a lifelong Democrat, and then I voted for President Trump because he's a great president. Because there was a direct line from Bernie 2016 to voting for President Trump. There absolutely is, especially in terms of foreign policy. Obviously not everything, but in terms of foreign policy, when people ask, well, how'd you go from being the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, and the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post, how did you go from that to voting for President Trump? Well, Abraham Accords, first president to step foot in North Korea, May 1st, 2021, we're supposed to leave a region of the world we've been in for 20 years. That's the biggest moral dilemma we face as a country. Never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts where we've just sent Americans off to fight. And now the children of veterans are engaged in the same battles. And that is like Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld. Well, you can look, the Gulf of Tonkin and Vietnam, and Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld's reliance on failed intelligence reports, WMD, got us into... You can see our wonderful intelligence community has gotten us into endless quagmires, from Vietnam to what Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld and President Obama expanded. So, yeah, I want Americans home, back home with their families, their friends. I want them away from these never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts, because that's what they are. It's not, and people say, well, what about Germany and Japan? That is not, yeah, we have Americans there. Yeah, that has nothing to do with what's taking place for the past 20 years. May 1st, 2021, President Trump negotiated a withdrawal of Americans. Biden is going to keep us there indefinitely. So that's just one of the many reasons President Trump was a great president. Did his Twitter profile overshadow in the minds of media and morally superior, apoplectic, oftentimes apoplectic liberal Democrats? Yeah, all they see him as is a caricature, this nightmarish internet despot and totalitarian and authoritarian. They don't like his words, and look, there are things that President Trump shouldn't have said, but they obsessed, they derived every ounce of political utility. They said, oh my God, look at the horrible things Trump has said, and then they replayed, and then they added subtext, and then they kept on harping and amplifying everything that he said that they found, just horrendous and offensive. And so, at the end of the day, President Trump fed them a lot, like in terms of his social media presence, and they took that and tried to overshadow all of his accomplishments, which were plentiful. Renegotiating NAFTA into the USMCA. He did a lot of great things. Prison reform legislation, allocating more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. He got the greatest share of non-white voters of any Republican in 60 years, according to Newsweek. So he did a lot of good things. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. This lady, Cleta Now, Cleta Mitchell, what she's done is actually pretty amazing. She's now involved not only in Georgia, not only in Michigan, so she's pushing for some reforms there, but involved in reforming voting laws and protocol in every state. If every state has zero, like if there's no protocol pertaining to drop boxes, for example, then you don't ever really have anyone who's assigned to pick up the votes. You just have what Republicans have stated was a system with really no rules. And if you have a system with no rules, according to President Trump, certainly not H.A. Goodman, but according to President Trump and Cleta Mitchell and others, if you have a system with no rules that allows for if you have a system with no protocol, then the protocol can be changed at a moment's notice. Then rules and guidelines can be altered at a moment's notice to benefit the Democratic Party. This is a problem because media will never take any allegation from Trump seriously, even if it happens to be warranted. So they say, "Oh, Trump made baseless claims. He made baseless claims." Well, President Trump should have fostered discussion, debate, discourse, and should have communicated his grievances in a manner that fostered investigations. Republicans didn't want to play ball. Now they're playing ball even in Georgia. Now you have the Republican Party realizing that Trump was right. This is actually, ladies and gentlemen, it's really interesting. They railroaded Bernie Sanders in 2016. There was no direct evidence of President Trump's claims in 2020. It's true, there was no direct evidence. I've stated this forever. However, there was no direct evidence of Trump working with Russia. They investigated anyway. They either purchased what they viewed as evidence in the form of a dossier, Clinton and the DNC purchasing the dossier, or outsourcing third-party tech firm assessment, or getting, they didn't have to get or acquire the loyalty of intelligence operatives, but James Clapper and James Comey and John Brennan, there's a reason they're at MSNBC and CNN, and they're getting favorable coverage in the Washington Post and New York Times. If the reverse were true, you had Republican intelligence chiefs on Fox News all the time, and in conservative publications being praised. You better believe that everybody from all of media would say, "Hey, wait a second. That's not right. These intelligence operatives shouldn't, suddenly veer towards the right." But that's not the case. When it suits Democrats, they say, "Well, they were unbiased. They just did what's right." They did the same thing in Georgia, by the way. The Republicans in Georgia, Raffensperger is a fantastic human being. Can you believe what Trump is doing? Now they're saying, "Oh, look what the Republicans in Georgia are doing. Look what Brian Kemp is doing. I mean, my God, he's actually restricting, or he's creating protocols for people to, let's just say, service the drop boxes." I don't know how it sounds, but, and so, you have the Republican Party, in a very, I should say, deceptive manner, is siding with Trump in a surreptitious manner, because the Republicans today, the political party, is pretty cowardly. So they try to play this game where they try to get the best coverage from media. They try to get the best, most favorable coverage. "Oh, Trump is so mean. Trump is so mean. Oh, my goodness, he's so mean." And now they're like, "Oh, yes, greater voting protocol in Georgia. We want greater voting protocol in Michigan." And there's about, 250 laws in 43 states. So 250 laws in 43 states. It's pretty interesting. If you just type in 250 laws 43 states. If you go ahead and here, Washington Post, how GOP-backed measures could create hurdles for tens of millions of voters. What the Washington Post means is how Democratic voters will have to show ID, prove that they need absentee forms. That's not good for some reason. But it's interesting, too, because for Democrats, they spent 4 years on Russian Facebook ads without one, not even, they love studies. They live their lives by the correlations found in what studies suggest. The suggestion of what a correlation could, the suggestion of what a study showed in terms of a correlation. But there was no studies about Facebook ads. Where were the Facebook ads studies? Gee, I wonder where they were. At least 250 new laws have been proposed in 43 states to limit mail in person. So, actually, that in Georgia, you get 2 Saturdays prior. So Brian Kemp signed into law. Republicans said, hey, you have 2 Saturdays prior to Election Day. What on earth is, if I'm wrong about that, give me your thoughts below or explain it. What's wrong with that? You have two Saturdays. I mean, 2 Saturdays isn't enough. And by the way, they stood behind the pandemic, by the way. Like all the changes and extensions, that was because of the pandemic. We're not going to have that. Hopefully not, in 4 years. So I don't know why Democrats are so reluctant. Because years back in Slate, the New York Times, they were writing about how Republicans were taking advantage of certain protocols that Republicans now want to address. Give me your thoughts below. Cleta Mitchell is pretty awesome. She's presiding over a whole bunch of reforms that now Republicans want. Isn't that interesting? They didn't want that when Trump was calling for them, but they want these reforms now. Democrats convince themselves. This is the one thing where they actually convince themselves with the hubris and the narcissism and the egotistical way of viewing life and politics. They've actually convinced themselves that there are good Republicans. See, I'm not a Republican. I vote for President Trump because Trump is, although there are things he shouldn't have said, his accomplishments overshadow the good things that he's done, the good deeds that he's done overshadow any negative things that he said. Sure, there are things he shouldn't have said. Is there anything that he did or said that is worse than President Obama's NATO intervention? I would love for anyone to explain if President Trump caused a country to become a failed state, because President Obama, Biden, and Clinton did in Libya. And it's interesting. There's nothing that he's done even close to that, Trump. If anything, he presided over the Abraham Accords. He wants to get us out from that region of the world. He ended covert arms programs. He did a lot of good things to reverse really failed foreign policies. Now we have a crisis in our southern geographic region of the country. And that's all Democrats, God bless the Asian American community in our country and in every state. God bless them. If you look at the cities the majority of the cities where atrocities are taking place, where horrible things are taking place, they're Democratic-run cities. Why are Democrats yet again dropping the ball? And it's all media just blames President Trump. It's like, no, these are Democratic-run cities. You can look. San Francisco and Oakland are Democratic-run cities. You cannot blame Trump for what's taking place in Democratic strongholds. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Thank you.